I think it's important not to attribute every firm's failure to austerity. I mean, if we look at HMV that's just collapsed, it didn't collapse because of slashes in welfare benefits or reductions in government spending. It slashed because it failed to keep pace with change and with technological advance and to offer people what they wanted. So austerity is certainly a problem. I don't want to understate it. But many of the best businesses globally, the Googles and Microsofts of the world, actually were born in eras of real austerity, and because they could succeed then, they can make it anywhere. And that's why I think a time of austerity is a great time to be starting a business and getting it going, or adapting a business to change. I think some of capitalism's critics will always be there. There are ideologues who are always going to hate what the free market's all about. But I think we who believe in the free market have to recognise that some parts of business are given cause to those critics to take the position they have. And when you've got things like Libor being fixed, or horse meat being posing as beef, or the excessive pay you've had in some areas of business, then you're giving fuel to capitalism's critics. The fact is, we've got to adapt and change and be flexible ourselves and recognise that business is going to do best in society if it's not seen with suspicion and antagonism by the people who are buying our products, working for our businesses and using what we make. I think there has been excess in pay structures, particularly but not exclusively in the banking sector over the last few years, and I think it's no surprise that a lot of people have got upset about this. Now, it's certainly not for government to have anything to do with setting pay rates, and I think that would be vastly unproductive, but it is for shareholders to call to account the people running the businesses they own. I mean, those companies are run in the interest of the people who own them, and when you have a situation like Barclays under its previous management that was paying out 3 times more every year in executive bonuses as it was paying in total dividend payout to all shareholders, I think you could legitimately say, for whom is that company being run? And it's for shareholders to rise up and say, look, what the hell's going on, and demand a better capitalist model. I think there are fantastic news stories around. I host regular breakfasts at the IOD for new businesses that are just getting going. And I've seen quite a number lately where you've seen people who've pursued a kind of passion. Last week I sat next to someone who said that when she left school, the only thing she was good at was shopping, and particularly clothes. So she set up a chain of jeans boutiques, Donna Ida jeans, that are fantastically successful. There was a guy opposite who liked burritos, and he'd been fond of Mexican food, and he said, why aren't there any in London? So he started a chain called Tortilla. And of course there are the many people who are launching internet ventures, many of them young people just sort of setting out in business. There are terrific stories like that around. Look, I was a journalist, they're never going to get the coverage that the gloom-laden collapse of a business is going to get. But they do provide a vitality and enthusiasm that I think is going to take this economy to a great future. If they adapt to it, I think it's having a really positive, powerful effect. It gives them much more affordable tools, ways to reach out and sell to a strong customer base. As a community, it means that our members are able to network in so many different ways. But but also what it's doing is it's reducing barriers to entry. It's meaning people can start up businesses from their bedrooms if they want to, and the old requirements for a flashy office or a kind of pretense aren't there anymore. You can grow it as you feel appropriate, and I think that's a fantastic improvement, and it points the way to a good future. I think there are certainly business opportunities in having a greater and more detailed understanding of how customers behave, how your own services and staff work, and it's bringing change to businesses that used to be in the area of telephone connections, for example, but are in future going to be in the business of knowing their customer base, knowing what their preferences and desires are, and making material available to them. There's of course public concern about how that is used and how it's sold and transferred, and that it is not abused. That needs to be watched. But by and large, in my view, it's not being. When I see what Amazon offers me every day, they know my taste pretty well. And they've put me onto a few interesting books that I hadn't actually thought of. And I quite like the special deals I'm offered online by Tesco, because they know that I prefer New World wines to traditional French ones. So I think there's a lot you gain from that big data concept, provided it's treated appropriately and rationally. And business people are basically honest and decent, and I think they will not abuse information. I think this is all part of the fragmentation of the business world. The old powerful conglomerates of the 50s and 60s have gone, and businesses are going to have to be far more nimble and far more innovative in order to make the most of their position. I think they'll have to form alliances more quickly. It'll reduce overheads, it'll improve efficiency, and it will provide many low-cost opportunities for people, and particularly young people, to get businesses off the ground. You won't need to have grey hairs and have been around for a long time and have friends and influence in order to get a business going, and that's got to be good. I think there's definitely concern about changes in geopolitics, and areas like the Scottish referendum and the EU referendum are examples of that. But actually, I think business in Britain and Scotland has proved and will continue to prove pretty flexible. If Scotland does become independent, I think businesses on both sides of the border are going to be able to cope. I think businesses looking at Europe, at the Eurozone, have seen so much potential change and worry in the Eurozone that they're actually adapted to change, that they're ready for it. The great thing about the free market is that it's a liquid and not a solid. I mean, it flows down and absorbs all the nooks and crannies and finds all the opportunities that are out there, and there are opportunities generated by uncertainty as well. And I think that's why we're so much better served than we would be by any kind of centralized planning. We do see it as a problem, and we believe passionately in diversity. I actually think it's getting a bit better in terms of non-executive directors of the bigger FTSE companies, but that's not an answer in itself, because the pipeline is a problem. There aren't enough women in senior executive positions. But I'm not actually just worried about women. I'm worried about diversity in a much broader sense, because what we want to avoid is groupthink, where everyone on a board knows all the other people on the board, and they're actually all being finance directors or chief executives of companies before and play golf with each other and think in the same way and so on. That's what I think the real worry is. I'm keen on diversity in terms of age. I think that's a particular problem. We need many more young people getting onto boards earlier. But above all, in terms of thought, people who will take a different perspective, who will ask questions that others haven't because they've got into old habits. So that's why I think diversity is hugely important. And the companies that take positive initiatives will do very well out of it. One of our core responsibilities is to represent our members to government. They talk to us directly, which is great. So I saw British Cable first thing this morning, for example. I was with George Osborne yesterday talking about how we hope the budget might look. So there's direct representation of that sort. We'll put in a detailed written submission to Treasury that has our suggestions. But one of the other things we do is try and reflect what our members want. We've got 35,000 members, and we've got something called Policy Voice, where 3,000 of them give us their views every month on particular issues. They let us know how they think the economy is doing, what their problems and issues are. And we pass that all on to government. We write about it in the press. We try and present those views to the broad public, and we'll keep doing that. I think the main thing I'd be after is energy and enthusiasm. To me, those are the most important qualities, more important than technical skills or intelligence. Those things are important too. But dynamism, passion, energy, enthusiasm, a belief in what you're doing is really what I think is important to any prospective employer, as it is to anyone you are selling yourself to. So to me, those are the main things. Of course, there are things you've got to try and get things right. Your application should be pitched carefully and reflect a knowledge of, an interest in a subject. It should be properly written and well presented. But if you're not enthusiastic, if you don't believe in the company that you're going to or the business that you're driving, I think you're stuck from the beginning. I would say that they should be thinking about setting up something themselves, creating something themselves. Now that needn't be immediately, but I think the most important thing one can say to people who are going out into the business world is that the best thing you can do is create something for yourself. And maybe you need to spend some time in someone else's business before you do that. But that opportunity, that feeling that you're in command of your own vessel, is just the most fantastic thing in the world. And that proliferation of competing businesses trying to capture enthusiasm and interest from customers, whether they're people or other businesses, is just what I believe the free enterprise system has to offer.